invite your friends to watch online with you while you're watching the live stream. You can click on this plus button where it will pull up a list of your friends where you can invite them to join you in watching the live stream. You can do the same on your mobile device. So if you go to this share button here, you will be given a list of your friends where you can send them an invite to watch along with you while you're watching the live stream. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we hope you stay connected with us, and make sure to like our Facebook page so that you can get all of the updates on what's happening here at Family Church. Hi guys, I'm Katie, and we at Family Church wanted to show you guys how to give on our live stream website. At live.ourfamily.church, you will see the option to give online on the right-hand side of your screen. You will be taken to a safe environment where you can see that your connection is secure. There are two options when you go to give. You can give one time or set up a reoccurring gift. So that's it, but we really want to know how we can support you and your family during this time. So please let us know, and we'll continue to be praying for you guys.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday night edition of Tell Your Story. We have three huge stories to tell you today, so you want to stick around. But first, let me get these things out of the way. Very important. Hit the like, hit the share, hit all of those things right there so that other people can join you and watch what's about to happen here on Facebook. And so during that time, we're always expecting the Holy Spirit to draw somebody to this presentation on a Wednesday night to hear the stories of some other people and how God really changed their lives. And then hopefully they themselves will want to give their lives and have their own story. So do that. Also, thank you for giving. Your giving has been amazing, and it just shows your confidence in what God is doing in our church. You can do that at give.ourfamily.church. So we have here today, we're going to start off with a couple of Davids. David and David Lawrence are here today. They're going to tell their story. As with all the stories, it's how was God sort of working in your life? How was he changing you, altering the situation, making it happen so that he could be glorified? And David Sr., you and I, and there's an interesting thread here today we didn't expect, but it'll all tie up a little bit later, went to Brazil together back in 2000. We were on the same trip with Ozelia Santini. It was the first trip to Brazil, and that was pretty amazing, wasn't it?
We were roommates.
We were roommates during that time,
yeah.
and we really got to see God work in that area. Now, for the two of you, father and son, senior and junior, David, your faith, you sort of started, you said you were about 11 or so, you sort of felt that there was some transition, God was sort of speaking to you, some sort of shaking up in your life?
I grew up in a very strong Catholic family, and had a lot of turmoil early on in life. My mom died when I was 10, and then my dad died when I was 7.
Wow.
So that caused, I always had faith, in God, but that really shaken my nerve,
Yeah.
for all that.
And then you had a motorcycle accident.
Yeah, and then I had a motorcycle wreck at 12 and 3 major surgeries and stuff like that, and lost the use of my left arm for a long time.
So then this guy, when you're 13, you were talking about, kind of came into your life and helped to put some things into perspective.
Well, being kind of an orphan in a small town, everybody knows your story.
Okay.
And I was good at sports, football, track, everything. And there was a series of families that just kind of took me in, and over time, I guess I maybe hopscotched around with them, and they implanted different things. And I had a lot of really great football coaches, out of Eustis.
Yeah.
It was a small town. But there was one guy that just said, David, God could have taken you out of this world, and you gave him plenty of opportunity to do that.
Right.
To this point, and he didn't. So the neat thing about being a Christian is finding out what that adventure is that he needs you to do. And he said to me at 13, he said, it might be something you have to do, and it might be something that your kids have to do.
Okay.
And at 13, I thought, that's kind of the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. And so it never made sense to me.
Yeah.
But it always stuck with me. And I think fast forward into, I was 37, sitting in a hospital wing in an ICU unit.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that in a second, where that all kind of came together. So, David Jr., you grew up in a family, grew up in the church, grew up in this church, right?
Yep, this church.
Okay. And so you're going to Sunday school, you're hearing about God and everything. Mm-hmm. And at an early age, you sort of decide, there's a God, I want to commit my life to him?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so things are going along like most kids are. Then all of a sudden we start to notice something different, right? In the family, start to notice some changes. Were they noticeable to you, or were they only noticeable to your family?
They were mostly noticeable to my dad.
Okay.
I just kind of shrugged them off.
Okay.
Just being kind of whatever.
And what are you seeing, David, happening in your son's life?
Well, he was a strong kid. I played football. He loved football. I was waiting for him to kind of hit that stride and really take off, and where I could coach him and help him. And his left side just seemed to just disintegrate. No strength. Kids started pushing him around instead of him pushing them. And it just really started to bother me a lot. And
So you're wondering.
it was more so than just being annoyed by him not being able to do something. It was.
So you're noticing a shaking, you're noticing some little signs of something that...
Yeah, well, just lack of coordination.
Coordination, okay.
Yeah, and then, also too, like we would wrestle, and, I could hold his left arm down with my one finger, and then his right arm, I was struggling for him to not, kill me.
So you go in and get it looked at, and what do they discover?
Well, at first they said that there's really nothing there. It could be, hormonal, the age he was at. Could be a lot of different things.
Or 11, 12?
Imbalance.
Is this the,
11, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
And it could be a hormonal imbalance, things like that. And I just kind of demanded, I said, that's not it, And they said, well, there's really nothing. He doesn't have any symptoms to test more,
Okay.
and so I kind of pushed it, and they did.
and what did they discover?
Well, he had a very serious tumor. It's a astrocytoma right on his brainstem, which is
Wow.
basically in your central nervous system.
Okay.
And there's about 5 cases a year with that type of tumor in that location. So to find a surgeon that had experience with doing that type of surgery was hard to find.
So you get diagnosed like on a Monday, and then they immediately take him in.
Yeah,
Right?
they
Like
said-
Thursday, you said?
Yeah, he had they admitted him to the hospital. He had braces. We had those taken off and got him in the hospital. He walked into the hospital and Thursday he had the surgery early in the morning, and he was paralyzed from neck down.
Do you remember anything during all of this?
No, sir.
No. What are you saying? Is it maybe like 2 months you don't remember anything, or a couple weeks? What's the time span of?
Anything from a couple years back from this given point in time right now.
Wow. So what they removed, what was the size? Did it affect anything? Any of the sort of permanent damage?
Well, yeah, where the tumor was, it was about the size of a golf ball,
Okay.
and we actually found it pretty early.
Yeah.
Usually with that type of tumor, it's about the size of a tangerine,
Yeah.
if you will. And they did a new type of surgery. It was called a stealth technology with computers and aided things, and 3 neurosurgeons, and they went in 3 times and got the tumor out.
Wow.
And
So for you, David, how was this sort of helping your faith, changing your faith, challenging your faith during all of this? It's not a normal childhood you're having, is it?
Oh, it wasn't?
Yeah. Yeah, really.
It is
It was
us.
your normal. Yeah.
It really strengthened it.
Yeah.
My faith brought me closer to God and helped me kind of lean on Him more than whenever something comes up, no matter how crazy it is, to just rely on Him.
Yeah. And so you were talking about sort of this chain of events and where you were at 11, 12, 13, and what this guy said to you that maybe through your kids you're going to realize something. Did you kind of realize that now, going through what David was going through?
well, I think again, I resented God. I couldn't understand why all those horrible things had to happen
Yeah.
when I was younger. Didn't make sense. Never did, even through my 20s. And then again, I alluded to earlier that I was sitting in a back hallway storage unit and on a little couch next to a window talking to a very old friend of mine. He was my best friend during the time I had my motorcycle wreck, and he knew my whole past. And I told him, I got nothing. I don't know how to help him. I don't know what to do. And he said, David, you went through this. I was like, dude, I was never paralyzed.
Well, you said your left side was.
And well,
Yeah.
I forgot about all those things. And he goes, remember, you couldn't use your
Yeah.
arm, and you went out to play football, and you faked it, and still played, and it all just came back to me, and I thought, wow, what Bill had said to me all those years ago, what Ray had just reminded me of,
Right.
that God had made me, He put me through all those things, and made me the perfect father to help him
With his situation and what he
succeed.
was going through.
Yeah.
And you sort of saw the perspective much later in your life, right?
Yep, yep.
You always want it when you're at that specific moment.
Why?
When you challenge God. Why? And he's like, you'll see. And there you are. You look back and you see why it's perfect. Now, the great thing about all this, you didn't sort of just sit back and suffer with all the things you're dealing with. A ministry comes out of all this. And so the ministry, what's the name of it?
So the ministry that we have is the Scuba Gym. One of the things that led me in helping David recover was getting him into a neutral environment where I could help him move, and then we could strengthen what he couldn't move over time. And And it worked. It was crazy. It was a crazy idea. Everybody told me I was crazy and I shouldn't be doing it, and moved forward. And now today we have locations in Australia, North Carolina, all over Florida, and we have special needs summer camps, spring break camps, and we also have weekly therapy where we get people in with MS, MD, people also like David that have been, paralyzed from car accidents and things like that, and I'm able to get them to walk,
Right. And
and
so,
function again.
you're an instructor there, and you've got a story.
Yes.
So you're like, I was once where you were at, and here's where I'm at now. And apparently they have no idea that you've suffered with anything because of how you're able to adapt so well.
Yes.
So that's what a great story. And again, it's this perspective at the time, giving God the opportunity to work through you and to use you. And at some point you're able to look back and see why and how and use it for his glory. So you guys are great. Thank you, David and David Lawrence, for being here today. Next up, we have Celia Santini. Celia is the mother of Gabe and Lucas. She is a speech pathologist, and she is currently at Advent Health. And I've known her for a long time. And of course, she was married to Ozilio, and she has her I Am Second shirt, which is a great ministry. I Am Second is all about what?
Well, this Auxilio Santini, his ministry was E3 Partners, but I Am Second is part of E3 Partners.
Yeah.
So that's why I love it. And it's just about, thinking about serving others, God and others,
Yeah.
before me.
Yeah,
So
it's great. And they got a
it's a
lot
good
of great
reminder.
testimonies on there also. It's kind of like what we're doing here, very similar chairs in a way.
Yes,
And
just
we
theirs
stole
is light.
everything from them, we'll admit it. But, Ozilio, and why this was interesting, and again, we didn't plan. I asked all these people to be on the show, and then all these people showed up on the same date. And there's all this connection, and it's all really Ozilio, because David and I were on that Brazil trip with Ozilio, and Aguas Linda's building that church in 2000. And so we were reminiscing about our time there. But let's start with you, then we'll get to Ozilio. So you as a child were a Christian very early age, 8 years old or so?
Yeah, my grandfather was a pastor, and so I grew up in church. So I accepted Christ at an early age, and Auxilio, he became a Christian because of the influence with my family.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then 1993, we started coming to this church.
Okay. So you were
When-
married before, what,
Yeah,
85?
85, we got
Okay.
married.
You
yeah.
met in 83, met at a medical conference?
No, actually, we were both on a trip in Argentina.
Oh,
when
just
we
a
met
trip.
each
It
other.
wasn't a
Yes,
conference.
no,
Okay.
no. Yeah, he was. No, we were just vacationing, and we
Okay,
met.
vacationing.
It was, yeah, a God
So you
appointment.
come here in 93, and gosh, sounds
Yeah.
like the time we were here, coming around that time.
Yeah.
And coming to this church, and what's sort of the impact? How's it helping you being here and what
Yeah,
you're learning?
I mean, I've been coming to this church for 26 years because our first day was when Lucas was dedicated.
Okay, that's
So,
right.
and Steve West was dedicating his kids
Right.
that he adopted from Brazil, and that's how we, it was something, a divine appointment, because he was here with his kids, and we're from Brazil, and we talked to the kids, and Auxilio met Steve West, and that's,
that's right.
later he started the ministry with
Right.
Steve West, so it was like God had all his hands in our lives and the church life since 1993. So,
So you're originally born in Brazil, and where were you born?
São Paulo.
São Paulo. And Santini was born
In São Paulo,
also? Okay.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to say you were the first Brazilians that came to this church, but you were the ones that I knew the best. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder what Brazil is like. He puts this trip together. We go down there, and something happens that we fall in love. The church begins to fall in love with Brazil, falls in love with our mission. And a number of missions are going on out there. And Santini is pushing all of these and making them happen and making us fall in love with Brazil during that time.
Yeah, and he organized many trips to Brazil, and I think a lot of people from the church went to Brazil.
Oh,
So
yeah.
There was this great connection. Then we built the church in Aguas Lindas, and then we went back and we built the kids' church, and
Right,
then we
education
went
center.
the education center, and then we built. So I mean, that church is huge now and
Yes.
is still thriving. And
I've heard it's transformed the community.
Yeah, it
and
did.
I remember going there first, and it was pretty shady, some of the people around there, and a lot of drinking, and could have been prostitution. You know, I'm not quite sure. I didn't ask what they were doing.
yeah,
But that whole community has sort of changed, and you know, it was Santini's sort of leading of the Holy Spirit that put us there at the right time to make that change. And now we have a whole Brazilian ministry at our church with services and everything. And you know, I have to tell you, I think it's because of the heart of Santini and sort of setting the stage for us, helping us fall in love, first of all, with Brazilians and really sort of understanding them and loving them. And then the whole ministry is here. Would you attribute that? I mean, that's what I do.
I think so. And he had such a heart for missions and for saving others, and he had an urgency to do it.
Oh.
You know, he wouldn't just like, oh, we have to do this sometime. No, we have to do it, and we have to do it now. And he would push people, right? And he
Oh,
would
yeah.
grab people in the welcome center. No, you're going, and you're going, and you're going now, and let's pray. And okay, let's pick a date. You know, and I think his urgency was something that impressed me so much. And sometimes it was a little annoying because he was, right? He had that
It's a little annoying. but in a
urgency,
fun
and
level
it
way.
was like, you know, we don't have to do this now. We can do it later. But later I thought, you know, it's like he knew that his time was going to be short.
Yeah.
You know? And it's something like, don't we all knew that our life is going to be short?
No, unfortunately, we don't always know that.
I know, right?
But he
But
was.
we
he was certainly
should know.
pushing that.
Our time is limited. Our time is short. But it's almost like he knew
Yeah.
more. And he had to do it, and he had to do it fast. He did 75 trips in 6 years. That's 12 trips in a year, a
75
trip a
trips.
month or more. So it's
You know, and this the picture that we have here is it's the last picture that I took, and I was going off to work on the American Bible Challenge, and I was going to be out of town,
that's right.
and you weren't letting anyone in the room with him, and for some reason you said that I could come in, and I got to spend that last moment with him, and I'll forever appreciate that for you
Yeah.
allowing me to do that. And I remember he had that smile, but he wasn't smiling before that and probably after it, because he was in a lot of pain during that time, and you were right by his side. And he was diagnosed with what?
Well, it was he got sick. He died in 1 week. You
Yeah,
remember
it was
that,
very
right? He
fast.
was fine when he went to the hospital. He had a small stroke, and then he kept having strokes and strokes and strokes. And later we found that the strokes were because he had pancreatic cancer. But we don't know. It was all so fast. He went
Yeah.
to the hospital on a Tuesday, and he died the next Tuesday. But the strokes were causing him to lose his language and everything. And that's why, you know, it was hard. But I remember that even when he was losing his language, when people would come in, he would pray, and he could pray. And it was one of the last things he lost was really the ability to pray. But even when he wasn't communicating, he would start talking and he could pray. And I'm like, really? Thank you, God, you know?
Yeah. You know, he's one of those people you go, man, that was too soon. But he started the engine,
Yeah.
and he got us going. And, you know, we have Carol Vera up there now, who is doing a wonderful job. She doesn't grab people and choke them and make them sign up, but she's got her own way of impressing on you the urgency. But it's a great legacy, and we're always
Yeah.
happy to be able to remind people about that. And we shouldn't forget. You know, in dealing with that with you and your family, you know, it had to be hard. 2 young boys hadn't graduated. Now both have graduated, are both doing very well, very
Very well.
smart too. And, you know, through those stages of grief must have been very difficult for you at this.
Yes, yes.
Dealing
it
with, you
was.
know, denial and dealing with anger and dealing all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Now we just have a fondness, I hope, for all of it and a fondness. And we always want to pay respect to what Auxilio has left here and his legacy, and the fact that we have a Brazilian church and
That's
missions
wonderful,
organization
yeah.
we have now is because of him. So thank you for sharing him with us during all those 75 trips that he was away, so that he could be able to do what God had placed on his heart and do it urgently.
Yes, and the church really helped me. The church was awesome, supporting
So
me.
afterwards, you were telling this to me earlier. I mean,
Yeah.
you sort of thought maybe you needed to leave the church, right?
Yeah, I did, because I didn't think I was able to be here and look at the church and see where he used to sit, and everything. But the church was so amazing, supporting me, bringing food every day, and that, there was no way.
Yeah.
So it's good.
And we can understand it. We could definitely understand why you would think about it. But we're so glad you stayed. And you're in a choir, you're singing praises to God, and it's the best thing to do right now.
Yes.
So thank you for everything. Thank you for
Sure.
being here to talk.
All right.
Next up, we have Alan and Joanne Wilson. And they have a very, very interesting story. Both of them work in the medical field. And once again, the connection here to Auxilio is very strong. And also the connection to mission trips is also very strong. We'll get into some of those things. But Alan, first of all, you when you were saved, when you understood who Christ was, where were you at?
I was 17 years old at a Young Life camp in North Carolina,
Okay.
and had been in Young Life several years, but that's when I came to know Jesus Christ as my Savior. I'd always gone to church, but that was the time that was the right time to say yes.
Became personal for you, became a personal Savior.
Yes.
Then Joanne, yours Sunday school?
It was. Thankfully, there was a precious Sunday school teacher when I was in elementary school. My parents never went to church, but they always sent us. And
okay.
she was the one who led me to Christ.
All right. So we wish it was as easy as that nice young faith, but of course it met some challenges along the way. Now, the two of you met in 87, and where was that at?
At a family medical practice.
Oh, so it was a medical practice. I think I had it
Yeah.
confused
Yeah.
with Celia's story.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
a family medical practice convention? What was it, a practice?
It was a practice.
You were at the
Yes.
family
practice.
practice,
Okay,
yes.
got it.
Yeah.
And so the two of you there working together, go out on a date, and then you decide, hey, let's get married. And when was that? When did you get married?
We got married on Super Bowl weekend in 1995.
Super Bowl weekend. Do you know who was playing?
No,
Oh, obviously you didn't care. 'Cause
January
you got married.
28th, to be
Okay.
more specific.
So you get married Super Bowl weekend, which I'm sure everything was available, so it was
Oh,
easy
yeah.
to get married during that. And so you're married for a number of years, and then some problems begin to come into the marriage. Explain that.
Well, we had everything going. We were 4 boys and our daughter Melissa, and at that time I felt I was more in control of my life than letting God be in control of my life. And I was working in Gainesville at UF, traveling back and forth every day, and we had great relationship. However, I fell into sin. I fell into lust, and that severely affected our marriage.
So that's around what year is things
That
starting to come
was
unravel?
around 2000.
About 2000.
Yes.
So what are you dealing with at this time?
Well, I didn't know that there were any problems in the marriage. Everything was good on my end. So it was a complete shock to me when he left. So it broke me pretty hard. And so it truly was my faith that carried me during that time. I never stopped loving Alan. That was never an issue. I always loved him. I loved him even after he left. And I really, I was on my face a lot during that time to God.
So in that the time of the divorce, which was about 2001, family-wise, how was everybody dealing with that also? Or the kids?
We always had a relationship for the kids because we always wanted to do best what was for the kids. I'm the one that had fallen. I'm the one that was trying to get life back together at some point. But as far as Joanne and I communicating, if it related to the children at all, that was open communication at all
Okay.
time.
So you're officially divorced now. You're living separately. Okay. And the kids are where? Between the two of you?
Correct.
Okay. And but God's not finished with you yet, right? So during that time, he's working on you. And what is he saying to you during that time?
I just constantly felt his presence, just to hold on. Just to hold on, have faith, believe in him. Because while what happened hurt me deeply, I couldn't not forgive him. And a lot of people don't understand that. There were times that Alan didn't understand that. There's times I think he still doesn't understand that I could forgive him, but I 100% wholeheartedly forgave him. God forgives me. How could I not forgive him?
Right.
I loved Alan. I felt like he was the man I was supposed to be with. He was to be my husband. So I was good.
So how is God working on you during this time?
He was working on me very hard,
You know,
and I started listening. I remember so much just from back when I was 17, I remember him just saying, I'm always here for you, and I forgive you, and I love you. And I started realizing that's where I needed to go back to. And so in a very dark time in my life, during this separation divorce, I pulled my Bible out and pulled up Matthew 1:1 and started reading the Bible every day. I started praying every day for all of us, but most significantly, I prayed for the Lord to somehow get me back to Orlando, that to be with Melissa, but to still have a relationship in raising all of our children as well.
right? So you said there was sort of, I'm going to call them a list of demands, which sounds like a hostage situation, but you said to God, if you can make these things happen, then I'll know that you're there, you're present. What were the things you were asking for?
Well, it wasn't so much I was begging him.
Yeah,
I was on my
okay.
knees begging him, not
Right.
saying there's a list of demands,
Right.
but just praying for something to happen, to open up in my life, and to get an opportunity to come back here, not knowing that Joanne and I would ever be back together.
Yeah.
That wasn't the reason. The reason was to get my life back in focus and to come back and be with the children and still be with Joanne.
Right, right.
But what really happened was in July 13th, 2003, I remember I actually got a job back here. I'd moved back and been here about a month and a half. And Melissa and I were going to a church somewhere about 20 minutes from here. And it wasn't there. So we pulled up in front of First Baptist Church Windermere at that time, which is Family Church now. And it was 10:10. And I believe the service back then started at 10:15.
Something like that, yeah.
And we knew exactly that this is where we needed to be.
Wow.
And I broke down during the service.
So he provided for you a job, he provided you a way to move back here,
Correct.
to establish your sort of roots here again. And then God began to rework on your relationship. So how does that process of sort of redating, reconnecting happen after all you've been through?
It was very emotional. It was very, very emotional. It's like every time that we would trade Melissa, it was like we cried every time. It was because it was like we knew we needed to be back together, and we knew that we were supposed to be back together. And that time between when we started redating, if you will, and marriage was just a couple months, because we were like, this is ridiculous. Why? We know that we're meant to be married again. And it was just a few short months, and we got remarried.
So do you re-propose and go through all the steps again for this to happen?
We did, and actually we took the, I don't recall the class, marriage, becoming one.
Yeah.
We took it with
Yeah, the Johnsons.
right before we got remarried again.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was
Yeah.
going on at this
Yeah,
church as we
sure.
were dating, and that became our marriage counseling.
Ah, okay.
And it was the greatest thing ever.
It's a great class.
It
yeah.
was.
So
We
then-
didn't get to do any of the homework, but
So you get remarried when?
May 1st, 2004.
Wow. I don't, when do you ever hear that happening? Have you ever met anyone else that's been
No,
married, divorced, remarried,
not personally.
and then happily married?
Yeah.
I can't think of it. Because people would say, well, what Alan did, well, that's it. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
You're out. You've cheated on me. But you're a real story of forgiveness during all that and hanging in there.
Well, it's another one of those things that you see situations. How would you handle if you had cancer? Well, I would do this. How would you handle if you lost a child? I would do that. Well, I didn't know how I would handle, this situation. And so once I was in it, it was a choice that I made through my faith and with God. And yes, I completely agree that other people may handle it differently, but this was the way that I did, and I'm grateful.
And the theme of it is don't give up.
Don't give
Don't
up.
give up.
Absolutely. Do not give up on your marriage. Don't give up on your marriage. It's hard. Marriage is hard. Don't give up. Don't give up.
And you guys have been through some challenges since then, cancer, right? And dealing with that.
Yeah.
But you were there for each other. Can't imagine you doing it alone.
No.
No.
Separated from family and
No.
everything.
No.
You
Absolutely
just celebrated
not.
a milestone birthday,
Yeah.
right? We don't have to say it out loud unless you want to. And that job that God called you here to, you're retiring.
Correct.
Do they know that? Or am I-
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
I know
Okay,
that. Yes.
And you're retiring from it, and I'm not saying it's a happy ending, but boy, it's a great story.
It
It's-
is. And not to know what God had planned for us moving forward once we got back together, as we were speaking earlier, between Joanne and I, her mostly, we've probably been on close to 30 mission trips.
Yeah.
And
With
a
the-
lot with Sandy.
And many
Yeah,
with,
right.
with many with Azuya.
Yeah.
And there's the tie-in once again with all of it that you're using your story and your redemption and your salvation to go and tell other people. And it's-
I didn't tell you this, and I've used our story on the mission field.
yeah,
I've had an opportunity
many times.
to address women in the
right.
mission field
that's right.
with my story.
That's right. I've
So,
been with both of you on mission
yeah,
trips, and
yeah.
you're always such a delight. Well, it's so great. Thank you for telling us that and telling us your story. Right now, with everything going on, marriages are really suffering right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to see a lot of effects about that later on. I hope someone sees your story and says, don't give up. Just because of a pandemic, really.
Yeah.
You've been through a lot more than that. And your testimony of hanging in there and letting God work on your heart, you can make it work.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us. Boy, there's just 3 incredible stories here today. And if you want to share your story, some of these that we're finding out about that we're using, people have submitted to us. So you go to share@ourfamily.church, send your story in, let us know how God has worked in your life. We would love to tell it sometime here soon. Also this week, check the social media for the updates on what we're going to be doing about our opening. And we're getting very close. We feel that some things are falling into place. So check Chuck, and he'll have a post about that. And then Friday night, be here for our next show. It's going to be 7 p.m. again, worship, and you're going to hear from Nick Gels during that time from the book of Psalms. Thanks for being here. Now go be the church.